Hi, it's Jenny and welcome to my first video of 2014. Today I'm going to show you how to make a mosaic background that was highly influenced by Gustav Klimt as well as the aesthetics of the Art Deco and Art Nouveau periods. First, we're going to start with our canvas and just prime it with gesso. The background really isn't going to matter that much because we're going to cover it over, but we're going to go ahead and spray it with Art Anthology's Colorations, and I used Peacock Feathers, Studio Blue, and Pesto. And I just let this run and drip and form some pleasing colors. I also spritzed it with some water to help the colors flow into each other and blend a little bit better. And then I just dried it and set it aside and came back to it, and this is the background that I had. So now we're ready to start working on our mosaic tiles. And I started with kind of a bright blue cardstock, and we're going to do two different types of backgrounds. The first one we're going to paint with gesso, and the blue color is going to shine through this a little bit, which is going to give you a little bit more depth. Again, I sprayed some water to just thin out the gesso a little bit and help that bleed through of color. We're going to set this aside and come back to it. Our second type of tile that we're going to be making is going to be based with dictionary pages, and we're going to tear pieces of vintage dictionary pages or any type of text you want to use and Mod Podge it onto the blue background. And we're going to cover these over, let them dry as well. And you can really work on whatever size you want, whatever's easier for you. So after those are dry, we're going to emboss all of the sheets, and for this I use Spellbinder's Decorative Fancy Tags 2, which is a really nice intricate design. I use that on the gessoed pages. And we also are going to emboss the decoupaged pages. So let's take one of the gessoed pieces and we're going to just ink it up just lightly with the Versamark ink, which is a watermark ink. You don't want to press too hard or it will get down in the designs. Then we're going to use some gold embossing powder and sprinkle it and heat emboss it. The idea for these mosaics is to create a relic, something that looks architectural and lots of layers and interest to it. For the text pages, we're going to do the same thing, ink it up with the Versamark ink. It was a little bit harder to get this to stick, so I probably pressed a little harder than I should have with Versamark ink, so it caused the powders to go down the areas that I didn't want as much, so I just used my finger to brush away some of the excess embossing powder. And again, heat emboss it. And I just chose to work with a size of paper that would fit in the embossing folder, but really, there again, you can use any size that's easy to work with. And I think for this 12 by 12 canvas, I made about 6 total of these sheets that were, I don't know, about 4 by 6 to cover my canvas. And I had a good many left over. Here they are finished with the embossing powder. So now we're ready to add a little bit more color to it. So we're going to pull back out the Art Anthology Colorations, and on the gessoed ones I made them more the green tint, so I used the Pesto. And where your embossing is, it's not going to catch any of the color, but I just let these dry naturally instead of using my heat tool with it, so that areas of color would pool up more than others and be more intense. On the text pages, I use the believe I used the Studio Blue or the Peacock feathers to give it more of the blue tint, so there'd be variations in my tile background. And there you see the finished look of the sheets. Now we're going to cut them into about 1-inch squares. I thought about doing this with my paper trimmer, but I really wanted more of a hand cut, not so perfect look, so I just eyeballed it. Some of the tiles I made smaller than 1-inch square, just to give some variance again on my background. Now we want to hold a spot on our canvas for our image, and this is the image that I'm going to use. What I had originally planned to do didn't quite work out, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, just draw the basic outline of your shape that you want to hold, because we don't want mosaics in that area. And now we're ready to start adhering our mosaic tiles to the canvas. And I used a gel medium to do this. I just kind of laid some out at first to see if I liked the look, and then you're ready just to start putting it on. I also used a few pieces of Whirlwind Papers, Kromekote Gold papers, which is a highly reflective paper, kind of a foil paper, and I just put some of these in to break up the texture of the embossed background. Now you can see the background completely filled in except for my area of the image where the girl image is going to go. Now what I had originally been going to do was do a gel transfer onto the canvas, and honestly it just didn't turn out so good. So what I did instead, after I scraped off the gel medium transfer, the next morning I printed the image that I had been going to use onto a silk that can go through your inkjet printer, and then I just used it, cut it out, colored it with pan pastels, and then used the gel medium to apply it to the canvas, and I really like how it turned out. I wanted to blend my tiles a little bit. So I used some of Art Anthology's Velvet Dimensional Paints to add some highlights and some lowlights around the edges of some of the tiles. And I just glopped some on with the paintbrush and used my finger to rub it into those cracks and crevices, and then used a damp paper towel to rub off any extra that was too heavy. I used Lagoon for the dark colors and Aloha for the light color. And you'd really be surprised how much this last little step really added in blending in the background. And here is the piece finished. I added a chipboard frame around it, and I also added some of my stash of vintage French sequins. These were perfect for the look that I was going for, and I just glued them on. I added a Ziva Creative Flourish across the lady's face, and there you can see some of the details of the chipboard. I heat embossed it and then sprayed it with the mist as well. I used a gold Sharpie to doodle a little bit on the figure, and I also wrote an inspirational quote: "Aim for the moon. If you miss, you may hit a star." title was a chipboard piece that was sprayed with the Colorations, and then some glitter was added to it. I'm not really one for making New Year's resolutions, but I do believe in setting goals. So around the side of this piece, I used the Sharpie marker to write my goals for 2014 around the edges. I hope you continue to reach for your goals this year, your artistic ones as well as your personal ones, and I hope you have a year full of blessings. Thanks for stopping by.